For people who find games like Blade and Sorcery to be a bit too intense or brutal, you may want to skip this first chapter of the video today. VRSO is a game that's coming that introduces bare knuckle fighting. Unlike some of the other boxing games or fighting games we've seen in VR, this is taking it to a very serious level. In this upcoming game, you are going to be tasked with trying to climb your way to the top of the VRSO by beating 16 other players. VRSO, short for the Virtual Reality Sport Organization. You fight other people in abandoned locations, and not only do the locations look really good, but they're going for photorealism, or at least as close as the VR headsets can currently show with these graphics and the people that you are fighting. So far, all we've got are some screenshots, but this game is supposed to come out Q3 or Q4 of this year still. Quest, PSVR 2, and Steam. If you're interested in this, and this game doesn't look like it's gonna be too intense for you, you can sign up for the beta that's upcoming through their official Discord server. Probably the most exciting thing about this game, obviously the graphics and how realistic it looks, is there's gonna be a ranked multiplayer mode. Between ranks, experience, and the currency in the game, you're gonna be able to customize, develop your character as we see with the different people here and their different tattoos, but making your character bigger or more muscular will not change the way the fighter actually fights. It will only be for their appearance. This raises an interesting question here I'd love to hear about from you in the comments. At what point does VR become a little too real and the brutality of the games becomes too strong? There's been some outspoken groups that haven't liked already what VR is enabling us to do, and this game I think is definitely going to push that envelope if they deliver on what they're showing in the screenshots. It's always really exciting anytime VR comes up positively in mainstream media, and recently UFC fighter Jared Cannonier appeared on the Joe Rogan podcast and actually brought up using VR for fighting training. He mentioned here he really likes Thrill of the Fight, the way you can move, the realisticness of the sensors when you're throwing hands, and said he was actually using this to cut weight for one of his last fights.
Have you done any of those VR games?
I've played Thrill of the Fight. Is it Thrill of the Fight?
Is that a boxing one?
Yeah, it's a boxing one.
Those are great, aren't they?
Yes.
You can kind of move around with that a little.
That one's fairly realistic as far as the sensors and responsiveness goes, and I was using that to cut weight for my last fight. And for the Adesanya fight, I was using it to, because I start pouring sweat on those damn things.
Yeah.
If you haven't checked out Thrill of the Fights, it's actually one of the older sports games in VR, and it can be very intense the way you box, because when you're throwing punches, it's not like other games where it exaggerates them. Sometimes your punches land and it feels like you did nothing to your opponent. I think this is very validating for the VR industry to hear people talking about using it for something so serious, but it was also interesting right after we're talking about VRSO and how brutal that game looks. What is the future of fighting games? I'm interested. Along the same lines of games with brutally realistic mechanics, Ghosts of Tabor has now surpassed $3 million in revenue, and that's just on Quest App Lab. This still is not in the main store. If you don't know what Ghosts of Tabor is, this is a VR game that's a lot like a PC game called Escape from Tarkov, where you are trying to survive in a war-torn area by leaving your bunker only when you need to for supplies to find extra weapons, and while you're out there you might run into other scavengers that are trying to kill you to get that backpack from you. The game has extremely realistic gun mechanics and has already celebrated 100,000 unique players between the Quest App Lab and Steam, where it's also available. The company continues to drop a lot of updates for this game. It's got a bright future ahead of it, coming to PSVR 2 next year. It's a big deal for any game to reach such a huge mark of revenue though, and it's not surprising if you've played this game that it made it there. And it's not surprising if you've played this game that it's reached this point so quickly. Since the PSVR 2's launch, the biggest complaint has been, where are the big, unique games that are going to be exclusive to these bigger platforms that can't be played on Quest 2? Synapse was one of those games that's gotten really great reviews so far since launching, and it shows in the fact that it has taken the top spot for the month in downloads. This, of course, pushing Beat Saber out of that top spot, which had been retaining it for a few months now on PSVR 2. If you haven't checked out Synapse, this roguelite shooter has gotten good reviews. People said it's a really strong addition to the PSVR 2's library, and any first-person shooter fan should own this game. It's exciting to see the game popping up in the top downloads, especially as I've talked about on the PSVR 2. Really, the top games seem to be a lot of the launch titles and the exclusives like Resident Evil 8, Horizon if you like climbing, and of course Gran Turismo 7. I'm hoping this means that more PSVR 2 owners are going to be able to dust that thing off, or maybe people are going to actually go get one who've been on the fence as we see more good games come out. Now I'm just waiting for Astrobot 2 and Farpoint 2. We can do it! For the many fans of Moss and Moss 2, Polyarch, the creator, is actually announcing a new multiplayer VR game. We know very little at this point besides a graphic and the title of the game, Glassbreakers Champions of Moss, showing multiple different characters that look like they're all from the universe of Moss. That's about all we know. It's a competitive multiplayer VR experience. They did tell us that Polyarch will be having a showcase later this month month where we'll get to see a full trailer, and of course when that comes out we'll drop it for you too to check it out. What do you think just seeing this image? My first thought was, is this like a Smash Brothers type game where you're fighting with Moss characters against each other? Because that would be cool. Although of course being a multiplayer VR experience that is competitive, there is other possibilities of what this could be. I'm kind of crossing my fingers to have Quill fighting other characters from Moss against friends. What do you think it's gonna be? Let me know in the comments. We've brought up Humble Bundles before that save you a bunch of money on bundles of whole VR games together on Steam. There's one that just dropped called the Ultimate Racing Sim Bundle, and although this is not specifically VR, 4 of the 7 games do have a VR mode, and all you gotta pay is $13 to get the bundle. It includes probably one of the most popular VR racing sims, Assetto Corsa. It also includes the Competizione, Automobilista 2, and R Factor 2. And then of course there's other games, NASCAR Heat 5, Automobilista, and Drift 21, but those are all just gonna be flat screen games. That's $13 for games that would normally cost about $338. So if you've been someone who wants to get into racing sims on PC, maybe you just got a new wheel, this Humble Bundle might be worth checking out, and I'll leave a link in the description while supplies last on these. You better act quick if you catch this video quick though, because this is only available until August 17th. We opened the video talking about the new brutal fighting game VR Esso that's coming up, but one of their older games that couldn't be more different than VR Adventure. This is a platformer game with a cute character that you are taking through the world, is finally coming to PSVR 2. This is a game that's been around for a long time. It's been around for years on PC. Now it's coming to PSVR 2, and it's still not quite the Astrobot 2 I'm personally looking for, but the game is inspired by Crash Bandicoot. It plays like Astrobot though, or Moss, where you are a character in it, but you're also controlling the small character that is platforming through the game, and you're tasked with defeating a mad scientist. So far, it's not a confirmed date of when it's coming to PSVR 2, but just announced for that, and it's great to see more and more titles coming over to PSVR 2, although I know I'm personally waiting for ones that are new to it rather than ports of games we've already had a chance to try. With all that said, what's going on in the gaming world that's got you excited this week? Let me know down in the comments below, but once again, thank you for being here with me, and I will see you in another reality. Must be time to record. Yeah.